Hey everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there. So in lieu of that, I'm going to be doing a video presentation of my 4 articles that I found. So let's begin. The first one is titled, "Does Sexual Identity Stress Mediate the Association Between Sexual Identity and Mental Health?" So within this study, first they found that there's a higher degree of mental disorders, such as depression, anxiety, substance abuse, psychotic disorders, and they are more prevalent in the lesbian, gay, and bisexual community. And compared to their heterosexual counterparts, they were wondering what was the factors that associated with that higher degree. And they're just trying to find any type of correlation between sexual identity stressors. And in this article is saying that that's stress based on individual sexual identity. So anytime someone either misinterprets their sexual identity, or anytime someone just assumes that they are another type of sexual identity, and the type of stresses that causes, such as ostracization, victimization. They wanted to see if those stressors are any indicators of any current or potential mental health problems within the LGBT community. They chose not to do any type of research with transsexuals because I guess the data was inconclusive. But they started out with 3 hypotheses. The first one is that heterosexual individuals, while they do experience sexual identity stress, but compared to the LGBT community, it is significantly less. And that the second hypothesis was that the LGBT sexual identity predicts having more mental health problems, and that sexual identity stressors fully mediate the association between sexual identity and mental health problems, so that there is a relationship. And what they concluded is that yes, there is a correlation. The researchers conclude that LGBTs reported more sexual identity stress than their heterosexual counterparts, even though heterosexuals also have those stresses. And that there's in order to alleviate the disparity, what needs to happen in society is that they would need to minimize the stressors. And I guess this article is just to say that, hey, community, there is a correlation between these two. So I guess it was just a call to for other researchers to continue to look into that. All right, the second article is narcissism and internet pornography use. And so they wanted to see and study an experiment if there's, again, any correlation between the use of pornography and the level of their narcissism. So narcissism or narcissistic behavior is just being really self-absorbed, self-admiration, and there's also sexual narcissism, where it's kind of like you taking control of your sexual appetite. And they know that historically there's a link between sexual acts and behaviors and higher narcissism. And in this article, they identify sexual narcissism specifically as a preoccupation with sex culture, and behaviors and acts. And they wanted to see that, well, they discovered that there's a positive correlation between sexual narcissists that are seeking sexual sensation and seeking sexual situations, an increase in partners, and the more variable and the more that they need to have that kind of control. And so they are more likely to use pornography. And the use of pornography has opened the way so that they can really cater to their specific needs. And so it was through an online survey. They compared individuals' narcissism levels who claim they have never used pornography with people who use pornography either once in their life or regularly. And the study concluded that the amount of time one uses pornography, there's a higher chance of narcissism. in general. And this is for both men and women. The third article is Masculinity, Pornography, and the History of Masturbation. So this article just kind of dwelled into the history of masturbation and kind of what the stigma was in the 18th and 19th and 20th century. And so, interestingly enough, in the 18th and 19th century, it's marked by the Enlightenment period. And so there is this feeling that any type of sexual deviancy, such as masturbation, homosexuality, was an indicator that a man was not in self-control. So a lack of self-control means that it was not, that they were not enlightened. And so then this was also a precursor to saying that because masturbation is in secret and it's in excess and it's so raw, it's just nature at its most perverse form. And so that in the past, masculinity was kind of determined by the ability to overcome and to control these impulses that your body had. And then how it relates to porn is that in modern society, people think that masturbation is, or pornography is for masturbation. But what this article is trying to prove is that pornography is about masturbation. And so then if you look in contemporary usage of porn, it goes, there's the foreplay and then it goes into the actual act. But then at the end of it, and what this article calls the money shot, is when the man ejaculates onto the other person. Then that is the whole focus of modern contemporary pornography, and that point when they ejaculate is when masculinity exudes and it becomes the apex of masculinity. And so it's just talking about how within the viewpoint of history, what was once considered unmasculine and kind of you were you could not control your own impulses, now it's been turned around, and that today masculinity is all about having control over the ability to ejaculate onto your partner. And so then there is control over nature. That is the modern rendition of having control over your body and controlling over the ability to self-stimulate and to ejaculate. And so it's just kind of talking about how there was a shift from the 18th and 19th, 20th century to today's contemporary view of masculinity. And what this article suggests is that for contemporary scholars and researchers to explore more the connection between these factors, masculinity, men, and control over nature. All right, and the final article is about personality traits, sexual problems, and sexual orientation in a study. So this article was attempting to identify how certain personality traits, how certain specifically neuroticism, so it's just a negative outlook, significantly affects and feeds into the situation of sexual dysfunction, and that it feeds in and maintains that sexual dysfunction level in heterosexual individuals. So the study was to find a correlation of emotional instability and negative outlooks just on life, and how that has an effect on the the sexual dysfunction. So they did this study through web surveys and personality tests such as the NEO 5 factors, and we took that test in Dr. Palm's class, and they noted the similarities between heterosexual and homosexual individuals. The individuals that had more success sexually and generally more positive outlook on life, and in this article they call it extroversion, they were significantly more likely to not have sexual dysfunction issues. There was also a positive correlation between neuroticism and fear of sexual performance anxiety, and with erectile dysfunction. So in terms of individuals that had other stress factors represented by the minority stress model, so this is stress factors that are tied to individuals' sexual orientation. The study found that homosexual men are reportedly more likely to suffer higher levels of neuroticism, which then they hypothesized that affected to some degree they're experiencing psychological maladjustment issues and sexual dysfunction. They have a more propensity. And overall, the study concludes that the findings that emphasize the crucial role of neuroticism in sexual dysfunction in both men and women, regardless of sexual orientation. And those are my 4 articles. Thank you so much for listening to my video. All right.